Well, thank you, Daryl, for that introduction. Wow, Kenny Miller, Brian Maddock, would you ever believe this many people would turn out for a North Dakota Grazing Land Coalition meeting? Absolutely fantastic. My hat's off to everyone for putting this on, and for you, those of you out there, for attending. Because it's only through interaction that we're going to make a difference. And both Jerry and Daryl said that, the importance of getting involved. And so when Trish contacted me, and I just told her, yes, I will be there. She had her doubts, but up until yesterday, but yes, I told her I want to be there. I thought I'd come because events like this tend to lower my blood pressure, and then Daryl was here and got on politics, and so much for that. But in saying that, it's really, really good to be what I consider back home. I don't get back home very often. Paul is glad of that because at times he thinks I micromanage, but that's all right too. Trish asked me to talk about the future of agriculture and some of the things that I see as I'm engaged a bit and out there. And so I thought what I'd put together and share with you today, some of this is going to seem like just old basic stuff, but it's an underlying premise I have in that the future really begins with the past and in farming and ranching in nature's image. And so I encourage questions at any time. The start of my presentation will be pretty basic. Most of you are aware of this, but I'm laying a foundation. And then what I want to do at the end of the presentation is get into some of the things that I'm seeing that is occurring in agriculture and what may be to be prepared for. Not that I can predict the future by any means, but I can tell you the pulse of what we're seeing and what people and those in the agriculture industry are sharing with us. So up until just recently, this statement held true. I had went back and earlier this past fall, I was doing a presentation and I looked up historical corn prices, 1980, and then what they were in 2020. Now they've risen a little bit since then, but historically speaking, this is what's happened. That is not very conducive to profitability, because we're basically getting paid the same as we were 40 years ago for our products. Then you look at annual operating costs per cow, and I know the majority in this room are cattlemen and women, and so you can punch in your own numbers, but what do you think, what does it cost you to run a cow, carry a cow for a year? Well, this past year, that answer was $863 on the average. And I can tell you that is probably considerably light if you take all costs into account. Now, what are calves worth? If you take an average, of course, steers and heifers, probably got about $1.50 right now. That's a lot of work to go through for $37, isn't it? That really makes you exciting about the future of agriculture. This is some data from Stats Canada, okay? The blue area up there, that is operating inputs, okay? That little green area, or red, that's profitability. Now go back to what I just showed you, historically speaking, the trends in agriculture. Does that bode well for agriculture? Do you really think this trend is going to change? You're absolutely kidding yourself if you think it is, okay? Everybody is farming for a reoccurrence of 2012 when corn prices went through the roof and livestock prices followed. Now, an increasing percentage of U.S. net farm income is the result of farm subsidies. Latest figures that I got show in 2020, over 40% of net farm income will be the direct result of government subsidies. In Kansas and in North Dakota, it's going to be considerably higher than that in the Plain states. In 2019 in Kansas, 76% of net farm income was directly the result of government subsidies. This year it'll approach 85%. Okay? Do you want to farm and ranch based on the whim of the federal government? You better be prepared for it. This is not likely to continue due to a variety of factors. Number one, of course, is the ever-increasing federal deficit. And I kind of laugh when I say that, but I really want to cry, okay? Lower percentage of farm population. We all know that farmers and ranchers comprise a smaller and smaller percent of the population, giving us less and less voice. The third one is something many of you may not be aware of, but many foreign countries are phasing out farm subsidies, okay? Before Christmas, I was on a teleconference with several agriculture dignitaries in England, and that plan is already in place. Within 5 years, they will be out of providing any farm subsidies. That is going to further pressure the same thing to happen here in the United States. Now, yes, Jerry talked about opportunities may arise in carbon capture, ecosystem services, and I'm going to talk about that more towards the end of this presentation. But you better be ready for the fact that farm subsidies will drop. Might not be in the next year or so, but they will definitely drop. The other thing is an aging population of trading partners. Does anyone know which nations of our trading partners around the world have and I'm talking about countries that have the wealth and means to be trading partners, have a population where the average age is less than 45? How many countries do you think? And if so, which ones are they? We hear so much, we got to worry, we got to trade with China, right? We got to trade with Japan. We got to trade with other Asian countries. Fact of the matter is, every one of those countries has a population that is older than ours. The only country out there that's a major trading partner with a population that's younger than ours is Mexico. That's the only one. So when you hear that trade is going to be the salvation of the beef industry, of the corn industry, pork, poultry, doesn't matter, that's an absolute joke. That is an absolute outright lie. All you have to do is look at the facts, and it is easily proven. Okay? So you need to take all these things into account. Your profitability as a farmer or rancher depends on this. Do you understand this? Are you studying trends and understand what's going on? You better be. Otherwise, you're just at the whims of what happens on a daily basis. So, how are you going to stay profitable? I have the good fortune, I travel extensively and work with a lot of farmers and ranchers all over North America. We always ask them this question: how are you going to stay profitable? This is the response I get 95 times out of 100, unfortunately. This is where regenerative agriculture comes in. Regenerative agriculture is a thinking person's game. So often in agriculture, people go to market their products, and all they do is call the local grain terminal, call the local sale barn, find out what those animals or that grain is bringing, and then they haul them in, and they're at the whim of the market. We can no longer do that. We have to determine how can we, on our own operation, become profitable, knowing what we know about these trends that are occurring. You have to have an open mind. You are not going to increase profitability using the same methods that got you where you are today. And I thought it was very well put how Jerry put it this morning, that you have to have the foresight to think ahead. I mean, I'm so glad there's people in this room, Kenny Miller, one of my mentors, who really helped move me down this path a number of years ago. And no, I won't mention how many, Kenny, but we're still young, damn it. I don't care what anybody says. Anyway, you have to have the foresight to try new things, understand that that's going to make a difference. If there's one thing that frustrates me, well, there's a number of things. You're right, Daryl, there is. But that frustrate me over and over. It's a number of farmers and ranchers I work with who think that their Schedule F is a business plan and is complete financial records. You're not going to stay in business that way. You know, I often use our ranch for an example when I'm out there, and I know for a fact if I ask my son, who's sitting here, what it costs him to produce a hot dog, he could tell you down to 1/10 of 1 cent what it costs him to produce that hot dog. You better know these as a farmer and rancher. If you don't, you're playing a losing game. You've got to know your true costs of production. You have to then stop all unprofitable production. What's one of the least profitable enterprises I see year in and year out in agriculture? Come on, it's not that early in the morning. It's cows. It's carrying cows. I just showed you $37 over input costs. Okay, do you know how many people I've had to go onto their farms or ranches, break out the financial records and show them that, sorry people, you may want to be a cowboy, but you're losing money doing it. Maybe your farm or ranch is not conducive to profitable cow-calf enterprise. Maybe you need to switch to stockers or something else, or some other species of livestock, heaven forbid. Like buffalo, right, Jerry? No. Right? So you have to take a look at that. The other thing is you need to sell all equipment and supplies that are not necessary for the profitability of the business. It absolutely amazes me how many places I pull onto and it looks like a John Deere dealership, you know? Well, I may need that. We used it once 8 years ago, you know? Yeah, you really need that, you know? Meanwhile, you've got a mountain of debt that you're trying to service, okay? That just makes no sense at all. As ranchers, we tend to focus on equipment and technology and dozens of other meaningless things that really don't make a big difference. A lot of people get offended when I say things like that, but it's true. The amount of time wasted on meaningless tasks is just mind-blowing. We have to stop focusing on yield and pounds, and we have to start focusing on profit. If you're going to survive in the future of agriculture, you better know your costs and be able to make a living at it. The other thing we have to understand is that our management, or as I like to call it, stewardship, really makes the difference. You dictate what your farm or ranch is like. I really get tired of people blaming it on the weather, blaming it on the markets, blaming it on the government, but I often ask them, do you have a mirror in your house? Go look in that mirror, because there lies the real problem. You know, and yes, I do have a lot of people who don't care for me after I say that, but it's true. It's true. Every single decision you make on your farm or ranch has either positive compounding effects or negative cascading effects. I put this saying in every presentation I do because it changed my life. In 1997, I heard Don Campbell, a rancher from Alberta, Canada, say this: if you want to make small changes, change the way you do things. But if you want to make major changes, change the way you see things. That statement changed my life. I think about it every day because I wonder, am I looking at it from the right direction? And it really forced me to learn to observe. Farmers and ranchers, as a rule, and I am not saying this of all of you, but are terrible at observation. It amazes me how many people can drive by the same thing but see things totally different, right? We've lost that power of observation. And I credit a lot of those early on in this movement to helping me understand these principles of nature, and you've all heard them. I'm not going to lecture you on them. I get tired a bit of talking about them. I said just a bit, Ann. I'll still talk about them, but These principles are constant. I don't care where I travel around the world, I can take these principles and enact them on any farm, any ranch, anywhere in the world, as long as it has to do with land-based agriculture. It's plain and simple, it'll work, and it will increase your profitability. Building resiliency and profitability starts with living plants and harvesting solar energy. We all know this. Plants take in CO2 out of the atmosphere, photosynthesis occurs. Part of that, it's converted into compounds, part of which are used for growth, part are exuded into the soil to be pumped out to drive a biological system. And that's what we're working with as farmers and ranchers. It's biological. Yet how many of us, how many of you, if you work with an agronomist, do they talk to you about the biology in the soil? You need to fire that agronomist, not worth his or her salt, okay? It's a biological system. A large part of those exudates are consumed by microbes. This is bacteria consuming those compounds. This is a photo of protozoa trapping bacteria around an air bubble. Once they do, they eat that bacteria, they release excess nitrogen. That drives the nitrogen cycle. That drives the nutrient cycle. The profitability of your farm or ranch starts right with that. Yet do many farmers or ranchers understand it? It bothers me because we were talking about this same thing 20 years ago, yet how many farmers and ranchers really don't understand that? It's biology that supplies the nutrients to plant. It's not you going and paying for those nutrients. Plants rely on microbes for nutrient acquisition, protection from pathogens, and gene regulation. Okay? For years, I heard, Gabe, you're going to go broke. You're depleting all the nutrients out of your soil. Really, I said, really. Here's a photo of Ray Archuleta and myself in the Chihuahuan Desert of Mexico. That is solid rock we're standing on, and yet there are grasses growing out of that rock. How does that happen? Is there a pocket of soil in that rock? No, that seed lands on that rock. It's wet long enough to germinate. Photosynthesis occurs. That plant releases those root exudate. Part of it combines with water, forms a mild form of carbonic acid, and starts breaking down that parent material. So Gabe will run out of nutrients on his ranch when my roots get to China and there is no more. Okay? That's absolutely asinine. It's ridiculous to even think that you need to be adding those nutrients. But Gabe, we have to fertilize. We just have to fertilize. There's no way around it. We cannot produce a crop without it. Part of the business I'm involved with, we work on a large number of farms and ranches all over North America. The way we start out with any new client is we do proper soil testing, okay? The majority of soil tests taken today are simply a snapshot in time of the inorganic fraction of nutrients that were available the day that test was taken. Agronomists then make cropping decisions based off that snapshot of inorganic nutrients, okay? They're totally missing the mark. People think we're geniuses because we're able to save them considerable money from the get-go, most producers, on their input costs. Well, all we do is proper soil testing. So our firm set out to find out really how much nutrients are available on the average farm or ranch. So we did what's called total nutrient extraction. This test cost a whole $50, okay? That's all it is. Think of total nutrient extraction as the soil's bank account. We measured only a foot deep in the soil profile, and we had a lab tested for total amounts of NPK and all these trace minerals. This particular study we did on 45 farms in North Dakota, Manitoba, Saskatchewan. It was right here, people. So don't tell me that your farm's going to be any different in this. We have now done this test on over 250 farms and ranches across North America. What do you think the average pounds of nitrogen in the top 12 inches of the soil profile was on these 45 farms? Come on, somebody take a guess. What does your agronomist tell you? 50 pounds, I hear. 75. 9,000 pounds was the average in the top foot. The least amount of any farm we've ever tested is 1,200 pounds. Can you grow a profitable cash crop on 1,200 units of nitrogen? You better be able to, okay? Otherwise, you're in the wrong profession. How about phosphorus? 2,300 pounds. Potassium, 11,000 pounds. Okay, micronutrients. Look at that. Every single micronutrient we tested for was higher than is needed for profitable crop production. Okay, now start doing the math, people. You really need to, unbeknownst to your agronomist, send in soil samples, get a TNE test done, then when your agronomist comes with his recommendation, his or her, start asking them, okay, let's take a closer look at this. Here's what I really have. I got 9,000 pounds of nitrogen. Nitrogen's worth approximately 50 cents a pound. I've got $4,500 of nitrogen in my soil. And that's just in the top foot. Phosphorus and so on. Figure it out. This is easy math to do. For 50 bucks, it's worth it just to see the reaction in your agronomist's face, not? Okay? Now, how deep do your plant roots go? They certainly go a lot deeper than a foot. If they don't, boy, you've got major issues, major soil problems, right? How much nutrients are there? Now, I know this is a grazing group, but this pertains as we get to grazing also, on any type of landscape. So what's going on if we have no deficiencies? Why do we need to keep adding these synthetics? How do we make those nutrients available? Because they're there. It's easy to prove. We're not short of nutrients. We're short of biology. This is what regenerative agriculture is all about. Biology is your silent partner. It's the interaction of life. Plants rely on microbes for nutrient acquisition, protection from pathogens, and gene regulation. Just what I said. This is one of the exciting things we're doing. We're involved with a project that it's a collaboration. Many of you know Dr. Jonathan Lundgren with Ecdysis, Blue Dasher Farm in South Dakota, world famous entomologist. Some of you may know Dr. Stephen Applebaum, who with Applied Ecological Services. We are doing the largest biodiversity study ever conducted in North America, where we are doing nutrient testing, soil carbon testing, greenhouse gas emission testing, biodiversity of both animals and insects and plant species across the largest acreage ever assembled in North America. We feel that when this is done, this will drive the future. Now look what's occurring right now nationwide and the changes we're already hearing about that many say will take place shortly in Washington, okay? What's going to happen there? They're going to start driving the fact that we can no longer farm and ranch the way we used to. We have to do it in a more quote-unquote sustainable way, and I absolutely despise that word, because why do we want to sustain a degraded resource, right? We have to do it in a regenerative way, and this is how we're going to do it. We are showing them that the nutrients are there. It's simply a matter of getting the biology in order. Okay? Another interesting thing that you may or may not be aware of is the word rhizology. The work of Dr. James White at Rutgers. The photo I have up here depicts the root tip of a plant. What Dr. White has discovered is it's not actually the biology feeding on those root exudates that occurs, but what happens then, that biology enters the root tip of that plant and actually enters into that plant. at which time that plant is able to absorb the nutrients from that biology. And then, I don't know if my pointer may not be working here yet, is these are root hairs on that plant. The biology then, once the nutrients are extracted, that plant has the ability, as is shown in the lower left there, or in the next photo I'm going to show you, has the ability to expel that biology out the root hairs so that it goes and gathers more nutrients. Now, what they've also determined is each individual plant has the ability to send out different carbon compounds to attract different biology to bring it different nutrients. Okay? Plants are much more intelligent than we think they are. Not only that, the plant community, the importance for diversity, one of the principles in this is that if I'm a plant asking for copper, the plant next to me might say, Gabe's asking for copper, I'm going to ask for potassium. Plants can detect that, and so they can send out different root exudates accordingly. Now, that shows the root hair of a plant and all the biology being expelled. Now, if I go back, what else is not only is mind-blowing is, during the reproductive phase of a plant, that plant then can move that biology up through the plant onto the seed it's producing, so that when that seed is dropped or is carried away by an animal, etc., that biology is already there to start the process over again. Now, what do we do as farmers and ranchers in our infinite wisdom? Okay? Number one, we add seed treatment, correct? We're destroying the very cycle of nature, the way nature evolved, for this process to happen. What else do? We get seed from a long ways away, right? Is that going to have the proper biology for our environment? Okay? That's why it's very important, and I'll talk later on a little bit about keeping your own seed. That's the rhizology cycle, okay? Spring that one on your agronomist. See how him or her do with that one. Next thing, okay? The agronomist will tell you, yes, Gabe, but a lot of those nutrients are in the organic form. That's why we don't test for them. In other words, they're stable. They're attached to a carbon compound. This photo here shows that plants have the ability through mycorrhizal fungi and amino acids to take in nitrogen and other compounds in the organic form and utilize them. So you can tell your agronomist, hey, you're really charging me money where I shouldn't be spending it. Okay? This is how you're going to make a profit in the future of agriculture, is by taking advantage of these synergies, of these natural occurring systems. So how do we get more biology? That really is not difficult. By growing a diversity of plants. I just did an interview yesterday with a major news organization, and they said, Gabe, if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing, what would that be? First I said, put me on a lake out in the middle of nowhere, but that's another thing. I said, that's pretty easy. The number one thing I would do is I would cover the soil with living plants. Diverse community of living plants. It sickens me as I fly all over North America and I look at how much bare soil there is, how many places they could be growing a living plant that they're not. Because really, plant and soil are one. You're not going to have healthy soil, you're not going to start all these ecosystem functions if you don't have living plants. Okay. How do we take advantage of those living plants? You must have animals. I cannot tell you the number of phone calls and emails I answer about, do we really need animals in the ecosystem? The answer to that is absolutely. This system will collapse without animals and insects. We have to get back to more animals, not less, as your speaker this afternoon, I'm sure, will talk about. And we need to get back to proper stock density. We really need to understand the power of stock density. And I was thinking back to this when Jerry and Darryl were doing the introduction about how in the early years, Kenny, we were just happy to do rotational grazing and give it some rest. But now we're learning that that's not enough. We have to increase stock densities at the appropriate time to the appropriate amount to really jumpstart the system. We have to use high enough stock densities to get the proper bite on plants along with good trample, dung, and urine distribution. Short duration grazing, move them off, adequate recovery time. What's the average stock density in the United States? How many pounds of, let's use beef animals, how many pounds of weight per acre? Any idea? Less than 500 is exactly right. It's actually a little under 300, okay? What do you suppose the stock density was when the bison moved across the northern plains? Okay, yeah, considerably more than that. You know, Kenny, you were there. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist that one, Kenny. Kenny's good-natured. I know he'd take it, but, you know, that was terrible of me, but, you know. Yeah, you were? Okay, okay. That was stock density, right? Yeah. So this gets back to, though, what else I was talking about in the nutrient cycling. So this is manure distribution, okay? If we rotate our animals on the left there, 14 days down to 1 day, how many years does it take to get one manure pat per square yard? Okay, I remember early on after listening to Kenny, I started moving every 2 weeks and I thought I was really doing something. Well, I wasn't going to get very far, was I? I mean, it'd take me 8 years to get a manure pad every square yard. Now you move them every day or multiple moves per day. What are you doing for that nutrient cycle? That dung and urine and trampling. And then we look at what animals have the capability of doing. This is 1,000-pound cow in nutrients per day, almost a quarter pound of nitrogen, 0.15 of phos, 0.50, half a pound of potassium. That's every day. So you put 100 cows on an acre for 1 day and look what happens. All of a sudden, those are real nutrients that are being cycled through. And we wonder why we read in history about all these vast grasslands that we have and how diverse they were and how thriving that ecosystem was, okay? Now the other thing, and this gets back into the future, what we're really seeing is, what is it really about that manure distribution that is so important? A number of things, but what's probably the most important? It's at the bottom there. It's the biology. Now we've been pulling literally hundreds of soil tests off of grazing pastures that are being grazed all over North America. It's amazing. We're finding, you know, soil should be approaching, depending where you are, 1-to-1 bacterial to fungal ratio, okay? Most of the soils aren't near that. Even in very good pastures, it's typically 5-to-1 bacterial to fungal, 10-to-1 bacterial to fungal. What do we notice about manure? It's about the perfect component ratio, 1-to-1 fungal to bacterial. This is how we're going to regreen the deserts. This is how Alejandro Carrillo did it in the Chihuahuan Desert of Mexico. Because every time you have that manure pat, you have the perfect medium, fungal to bacterial ratio to start those seeds germinating. We have found that this is one of the major mistakes that are being made in agriculture systems when we take cropland, for instance, and want to move it back to a perennial system. We're not getting that fungal to bacterial ratio right first. You have to get that ratio much closer to 1-to-1 to have a very successful stand of diverse perennials. So we're using cover crops along with animal integration, proper stock densities to move that fungal component, get that in line, and then we can seed it back to diverse perennials. This is what's going to save you money as a farmer and rancher, keep you in the business. This is what's going to add diversity. This is a picture of a native paddock. How many different species do you think are in that paddock? And I know Diane's going to talk a bit about this afternoon. The importance of diversity. This is going to be the future of agriculture, is going to really focus in a lot more on diversity. What does that diversity do? It's optimum nutrition for the livestock. We can get much higher bricks, in other words, energy, just in layman's term, when we have very, very diverse ecosystems. It absolutely blows my mind today how many people just worry to death about balancing the ration for their livestock. I don't want an animal that can't thrive in my environment. Why would you want that? Why would you want to give animals supplement? If they don't survive in your environment, you don't want them there, do you? In order to get to that point, we need healthy soil with a diverse community of plants, though high bricks, because the higher the bricks is, the more gain you're going to get on your livestock, the more energy, the less than they're going to require. And we've got some statistics here Dr. Ellen Williams put together. As bricks increases, we can significantly increase average daily gain in our livestock. Not just a little bit, significantly. There are many grass finishers now who are consistently getting average daily gains on finishing cattle 3.5 pounds and above, to well over 4 pounds per day on 1,200-pound finishing animals on forage. What do you suppose the average bricks content we're finding on ranches around North America is? Any idea? It's 3. It's a 3 bricks. This is approximate because it's going to vary a lot according to genetics, according to what type and kind of animal you have. But for every 1 point move in bricks higher, you're going to get about 1/10 of a pound increase in average daily gain. Okay, now that varies, of course, so realize that. But once we get up to bricks, you know, if we can get above 15, we're going to get gains 2.5 pounds up. Once we get into the 20s, we're going to have 3 pound plus average daily gains pretty consistently with the right type of cattle and the diversity. Now, you might ask, okay, what's the ramifications of that? That's not the production model I'm in, is grass finishing. I'm going to talk about that coming up. Here's just a chart on the impact of forage quality and average daily gain. Now, we know animals can consume 3.5% of their body weight, okay, right, in dry matter per day. So think of this. If you have higher bricks in your forages, how many more animals are you going to be able to run on your operation? No, instead, let's go pay an outrageous price for land, right? Why not just make better use of the land that you do have, increase your efficiencies there, increase your profitability that way? One of the things we do with new clients is we teach them the importance of simple things like this, okay? And if they're out there, we always start with where they're at. So a new client, drive up, and we spend a day with them. We ask them, how often do you move your livestock? Well, I move them about once a month. Well, how often do you check your livestock? Well, I check them once a week. Then you better be moving them once a week, okay? It's not any more work. Just go ahead and do that. That's where you start. But then you ask them, when are you moving those livestock? Well, we usually go check them in the morning. Why would you do that? You know what happens in photosynthesis. You know what happens at night. A plant takes all its energy, puts it into the roots, right? And then you're going to move cattle in the morning when that plant is at its lowest for nutrient density. Are you striving for low average daily gains? Okay? There is no way you should be moving cattle in the morning. Always afternoon. And then we ask them, okay, if they're still in a haying or operation that puts up forage, whether it be a hay or haylage, okay, are you cutting hay in the morning? Well, sure. Well, why would you do that? Why would you cut your hay when it's at the lowest quality? You know, you have to think of things like this. If you're moving a hay machine or a forage chopper in the morning, don't. That's ridiculous. It's costing you money. It's simple things like this that make big differences. Another thing that makes a major difference is form follows function, type and kind. And I don't care one iota about breeds. If you've ever been on our ranch, we have about every breed imaginable. I could care less as long as the meat's red, okay? But is it the right form and function to fit your environment? And your environment is different, and your environment is different than your environment. Yet, what are we doing now in production agriculture? It's all about the feedlot, right? It's what the feedlot wants. And what are they going to pay you extra to have their type and kind? An extra $2 or $3 a hundred? La-di-da. That's really going to take money home to the bank. We have to get out of this mindset. I own this newspaper. This is from 1888. Yeah, Kenny, I was around then too. Okay? Look at this. This is that paper. Forage-based genetics. Look at that. Look at that animal there. Here's a Breeder's Gazette from 1882. Look at that cow on there, right? You have to have animals that thrive in your environment. Which of these people are going to thrive in North Dakota? Okay? I'll never forget when this photo was taken and Neil Dennis put it into his presentation. I just thought that was gold right there. That was gold. Point being, we have to have animals that thrive in our northern environment. We have to understand the power of natural selection. All we hear over and over in agriculture today is, nope, you got to use EPDs in the beef business, you got AI, you got to do embryo transplant, you got to do all this. Yet how many of those have your best interest as a farmer or rancher at heart? If you have not read this book, it should be mandatory reading for any farmer, rancher, and consumer, as a matter of fact. Fred Provenza's book, Nourishment. He talks about how animals have the innate ability to select their diet based on their nutritional needs. And there's a lot of work being done on this. It is absolutely mind-blowing how, if given the opportunity and the diversity to select, animals can and will do that. They will balance their own needs. Where's Paul sitting? Oh, right here. Paul, has there been any plant on our ranch that you have not seen a cow eat? Nope. Leafy spurge? Yep. Certainly Canada thistle, wormwood, yeah. We have all those beautiful forbs on our ranch, okay? They'll only eat a certain amount, certain time, but they balance their needs. Last year, and I didn't put that photo in there, but I turned finishers, one of the days Paul allowed me to do so, I turned finishers into a new paddock, and there was a buffalo berry tree there. Those animals just took a beeline to that buffalo berry tree and completely stripped all the leaves. There was something in there that they wanted. Then they were fine. Next paddock we turned them in there, they did not touch the buffalo berry. Okay? They balanced their own needs. Are we allowing our livestock to do that? No, instead we think we're the genius. We know what they need better than they know it. Okay? That's a losing proposition financially when you go down that path. This is a photo of a couple calves out grazing during the winter. I am a firm believer that we have so skewed the current production model that our animals have no idea how to behave anymore. They learn this from their parents. You know, our cattle pretty much winter on snow when we do have snow, a little difficult this year, which I'm not complaining, but why do people think that cattle can't survive on snow? Do we really think the Native Americans were out there chopping ice for the buffalo and for the deer? Really? Come on. Studies done in Canada, 28 pounds difference in cow weight, spring of the year, groups wintered on snow versus groups given fresh water. My wife says I need to winter on snow more, okay? We have to get back, and I know the majority of you are doing that here, but Paul was telling me he had a text from a friend yesterday getting ready to start calving, and I'm going, oh, that just does not sound good at all. We've got to calve in sync with nature. So on our ranch, we start calving May 15th, finish by June 30th. Calves stay on the cows until April, at which time they're fence-lined weaned. Okay? This is a bred heifer on our ranch grazing in the winter. Okay? Now I am going to make a statement which a lot of you will, if you don't think Gabe is crazy, you will after this statement. But think about my thought process here. Okay? I honestly believe that, well, I'll finish this first. All heifers are exposed to bulls for 30 days. They're ultrasounded 45 days later. Cows are not tested because we remove every open cow after calving. Bulls are selected from our own herd. No vaccines, no wormers, no insecticides, no supplements, including salt and mineral. We removed all crutches quite a few years ago. Why do you want to prop up the bottom end? Producers spend money that only serves the purpose of keeping those poor doers in the herd. Why do you want to do that? They're the ones that are costing you money. Why not get rid of them? Sell the bottom end and the expenses stop. Okay? Now here's my controversial statement. It's something we've been following for a number of years. I believe that if you get more than 50% of your yearling heifers bred, you are feeding them too good. You are wasting money. You need to challenge them. You will not advance fertility and the ability of those animals to thrive in your environment if you get more than 50% approximately bred. We're spending too much money keeping them. I remember back when I was in the registered business, I would brag that I would go years without having an open heifer that was exposed not get bred. Boy, was I stupid. That was absolutely stupid. I overfed them, not just by a little, but by a lot. How are you going to get animals that truly fit your environment unless you challenge them? Okay? That's one of the beautiful things about leaving the calves out on the cows all winter. Because I tell you, once the ones that do get bred, and then they will stay in your herd. How many times do you hear a fellow cattle person say, oh, but man, I had it terrible with our 3-year-olds. We had a lot fall out. Well, that shows you a lot of them should not have been bred in the first place. Okay? Think about it. Okay? Number one reason to move to regenerative agriculture, regenerative stewardship, is money. It's highly profitable. Now, in order for it to be highly profitable, you have to educate yourself. One of the things I enjoy most about this movement, if you call it that, regenerative agriculture, is that I can literally pick up the phone, call anywhere, any country in the world, and talk to another person who is moving down this path, and they're willing to talk to you and to share ideas. That is a good thing. You don't see that in the current production model. You know, you just don't see that. But there's new things occurring every day, and we can learn from each other every day. Next thing, you absolutely have to study markets and trends, okay? The pastured protein industry has increased greater than 20% every year in a row for 20 plus years. This year, it's actually going to be up several 100%, okay? Which industry do you want to be in? Now, I am in no way trying to tell you what you should or shouldn't do, and I'm only sharing with you the facts, because these are facts. This is such a fact that just here this past fall, one of the top 3 feeders in the United States hired our firm to consult with them to move them into a grass-based model. Okay? That's how serious this is. If you think, no, I'm just going to sell to feedlots, go ahead, believe that. You got your head in the sand, okay? Heirloom grains. 1/3 of Americans are now limiting or avoiding gluten. If you're a wheat producer, should this concern you? I'm going to talk more about that coming up. What we're doing on our ranch to counter that and to take advantage of that trend. Are you even aware of this trend? Are you studying these markets? Spend your time where it will bring you the most dollars. I talked about this earlier, how most farmers and ranchers are very good at production, but they are terrible at business and they're terrible at marketing. This is their idea of marketing, okay? Don't come and complain to Gabe Brown that you're not making money as a farmer or rancher and this is what you're doing, okay? Sorry, I'm not going to feel sorry for you one iota. You really need to be spending a minimum of 30% of your time marketing, and it should probably be over 50% if you truly want to be profitable. Yeah, farmers and ranchers suck at marketing, plain and simple. Become a price maker, not a price taker. So the way to start doing that is you need to decide on your farm, your ranch, what's your unfair advantage? What can you do on your operation that consumers, customers are demanding, and it will bring you a fair profit, okay? Look at how I enjoy reading about business and successful businesses. What do they have in common? Every single one of them did not start out producing a product, then try and figure out how to sell it. No, they started out, where is the demand? Can I fill that demand and make money at it? Yet how many of us as farmers and ranchers do that? Do we even think in that realm? Okay? One of the things we started doing years ago was planting these multi-species cash crops. Here's oats, barley, peas, and flax. We're adding faba beans to that now. Okay? That is the perfect ration for our finishing hogs, our laying hens, our broilers, and then I get a person coming up wanting a cover crop. Yeah, I got the perfect mix right here. That's how you market. Plus, think of the synergies that are happening from an ecological standpoint in the soil as I have this diversity, okay? Take advantage of the synergies. Use it to your advantage. Do I worry about balancing a ration? Paul, have the chickens or hogs ever complained about this type of ration? No, they've never gone on strike, have they? One of the things I've been monkeying with for a number of years is developing an open pollinated corn variety with low maturity so it can get dry enough in our environment. So I want to, for years, those who know me knew I sold Pioneer seed and then I just couldn't do it anymore. I was using open pollinated non-GMO corn on my own farm and yet selling Pioneer seed. It finally got the best of me, Daryl, and I said, no, I can't morally, ethically do this, so I quit. Because I would think we should be able to stick an auger in the bin and put it in the ground then, instead of paying the kind of money for that. Now, what are the benefits? They say, yeah, Gabe, but your yield is less. Yes, my yield is less with the open pollinated corn, but my expenses are considerably less, and my profit opportunities are considerably higher. For instance, here's what we're able to do with open pollinated corn. The time I put this together last fall, conventional corn was selling for $3.37 a bushel. Non-GMO could get $12 a bushel for feed, okay? You roll that feed, that corn for cereal, you can get $200 a bushel. You make it into tortillas, and I have a number of friends who are doing that, becomes worth $318 a bushel. Now here is Brown's Ranch's latest endeavor. You put it in Bourbon, you're at $586 a bushel, okay? That is our label there. Come on now, who wouldn't want to try that? Taint Bourbon, that's just genius. Daryl, there may or may not have been some bourbon involved when we figured out that label, but That's, you and Jerry probably could have come up with a better one last night, but that's another one. Okay? So I put this up there simply to challenge you. What's your unfair advantage on your farm or ranch? What can you do? What can you market? You know, I know Ryan Brewski's sitting up front here. Ask that young man what he's been able to do on his ranch, right? Ryan, are you having more fun than you did in the old? Joe, what do you think of it? Yep, exactly. Dad likes it too. You change the way you see things. Those of you who know me know for years I've been planting cereal rye, winter triticale, hairy vetch. Slam dunk, no-brainer, just works. But that's only 3 species. So I started adding forage winter wheat to that. And then I got thinking, golly, I should be able to plant barley or something with it. No, Gabe, you can't do that. Barley won't overwinter in North Dakota. Really? The past 3 years, I've successfully seeded barley in the fall and combined it the next spring. Okay? Do you know what that baby's going to be worth when I get it ready to go? It's a fall-seeded biennial. It's cold tolerant. I can graze it, I can combine it. I won't use the hay in word, okay? We don't want a hay. We can harvest it in early July. Look at the window of time that gives me, given precipitation, to get a cover crop established to improve soil health and then to winter cattle on that diverse cover crop mix, right? People say, oh, you can't do that. Barley won't survive in North Dakota. Okay, don't tell my barley that then. You know, it has for 3 years. This year, I'm hoping for a little snow cover because it's up in green. And I noticed a tint of green to it yesterday. I'm a little worried that it's going to break dormancy here. But we'll see, right? Don't tell me I can't do something, you know. But I will say the bananas and pineapples did fail, you know, on our ranch. Does anybody know what this is? I know this is a poor picture. This crop had already been combined when I took this photo in October, okay? That's Salish Blue perennial wheat, okay? It's actually 45 different wheat varieties, okay? But it's called Salish Blue. You seed that, you can either seed it in the spring or the fall, and then it acts like a fall-seeded, short-lived, okay, perennial. You harvest it in early July, and it is low gluten. Okay? Many of you have heard of Kernza, right? Which one is Kernza? Which one's Salish Blue? Kernza is on the right, Salish Blue on the left. Okay? They've been monkeying around with Kernza for years, nothing against them, that's great. Which is going to yield better? The other thing, most important thing, which is there a demand for? This is bread made out of Salish Blue, and it is absolutely fantastic. What's even better about Salish Blue, here's the economics of it. It'll yield, depending on soil quality, between 20 and 60 bushels per acre. Right now, it's bringing $1.50 a pound, okay? That's between $1,800 and $5,400 gross per acre at those yields. Remember what I said earlier about a third of Americans are trying to avoid gluten? Bingo, here's the answer. We will be seeding some of that on our ranch this spring. It is not available, Jerry. Don't bother writing it down yet, but it will be. The beautiful thing about it, the company that has the rights to this heirloom, they're all heirloom varieties, they are making sure that it is only being grown on regenerative farms and ranches. They're being very picky about where they breed up that seed from. So that's an exciting project that I think you're going to be hearing a lot more about. And the demand for it right now is through the roof. My point being, there is a difference. There's a real difference in the nutritional density of food. So those of you who are direct marketing have all seen what's happened, especially since COVID. The demand has just skyrocketed. What we're seeing is anywhere from 200 to 1,200% increase in demand for products, people are demanding to know where that was grown and raised and how it was, and they want to know the people that are responsible for the food that they're putting in their mouths and their children. So, the future of ag, you are going to have to pay a lot more attention to the nutrient density of what you are producing. This is who Paul uses, Iowa State University, their lab. That's who is doing all the nutrient density of the, at now anyway, of the products that we produce, okay? Right now, Paul has been averaging, this is a plate of ribeyes. The omega-6 to 3 ratios have been averaging less than 1.3 to 1. That's approaching wild salmon, okay? I challenge everybody, I hope, test their own products. Find out where you're at. It absolutely blows my mind how many large companies, large purveyors of grass-finished beef or poultry or lamb, whatever the case may be, pastured pork, have not tested their products. They have no idea. One of the things, and I know there's a lot of bad that's come about from COVID, but one of the good things is consumers are starting to realize that their health is directly related to what they're putting in their mouths. That is directly related to soil health. That is the future of agriculture. This is Dr. Stephen Van Vliet, Duke University Medical Center. On the right there, that is a mass spectrometer. Dr. Van Vliet is doing nutrient density studies of products grown in regenerative soil versus conventional products. He is able to measure over 2,500 different phytonutrient compounds. Okay, this is where the future lies. I just spent this past weekend in Texas working with a clinic down there that is focusing on purchasing products that have been grown and raised conventionally, and we need to prove out the nutrient density of those. That's where this is all headed. You know, are you going to be ready for that? Okay? Those phytonutrient compounds are what drives plant health, animal health, human health. You as a producer can more or less write your own check by what you're doing. These are some of the companies that have contacted us, and I can't put them all up there, but these have allowed me to do so, that are moving in that direction. They're going to be sourcing products that are higher in nutrient density because their customers are demanding it. Are you going to be ready for that? You're sticking your head in the sand if you're not looking at it. And why would you not want to take advantage of that? We talked a little bit earlier about grocery home delivery before the meeting started this morning. I remember standing in front of groups a year ago and telling them by the year 2025 it was projected to be at 25%. It's already now over 40%. And you can do this even from Ekalaka, Montana. You can ship anywhere in the United States, continental US. This is not that difficult to do. You are going to increase profitability 30 to 40% by doing so. Okay? Unless you're like Jerry and have major tax problems and don't want any more income, then you wouldn't look at this. Okay? Final thing I want to talk about a little bit is you hear a lot about carbon sequestration. And we're working a lot with individuals and groups that are proving this out. We get contacted every week by companies that want to know, okay, should they be investing in regenerative agriculture? Can we truly sequester carbon on regenerative soils? Okay, we are doing this over a large area of North America where we are testing out the principles of adaptive grazing. How much carbon can we really sequester? Now, here is some data. On the left, those horizons are 1 stands for 0 to 6 inches, 2 is 6 to 12, 3 is 12 to 18, etc. We're comparing adaptive grazing, rotational grazing, and continuous grazing. Look at the difference in the amount of carbon that we're able to sequester through adaptive grazing. This is done on multiple farms, ranches, multiple states. Okay? Here is the total carbon. This is carbon in kilograms per square meter. On the left, on the middle is tons. per acre. On the right is CO2 equivalent. Look at the difference there. 188 tons versus 105 versus 81. Okay? We have major companies willing to invest major amount of money in land to be regenerated if we can sequester that types of carbon. This just simply puts it on a graph, and you can see the different states. Every one of those colors is a different state. We're being able to do this anywhere in the world as long as we use those practices. Now, just finishing up here, we get asked all the time by our clients, should we sign on to one of these carbon programs? I want you to compare it to this. Oil is currently somewhere around $50 a barrel. I just use that for ease of figuring. There's 261 pounds of carbon in a barrel of oil. That means the carbon in that barrel of oil is worth 19.1 cents per pound, okay? 2 million pounds is a furrow slice, okay? 6 inches. If you have 1% organic matter in that furrow slice, you've got 20,000 pounds of carbon. Take that times the 19.1 cents. For every 1% organic matter, you have about $3,820 worth of carbon in that soil. Now go to Kenny Miller's. Where are you at now, Kenny? 20% organic matter down there on those buttes? Something like that. I bet it's getting close. Okay, think of the dollars. Right now, they are not economically able to accurately measure carbon. I would hate to be doing these adaptive practices, storing that much carbon in my soils, and then not be paid for it. And all of these companies, trust me, I've worked with all of them, they are only measuring 5 to 10% of their clients that are signing up. What if you're the other 90, 95%? They're just going to shoot you a baseline figure and pay you accordingly. We're strongly recommended to not sign on the line. The technology is not there. In saying that, Dr. Jason Roundtree at Michigan State has put together a team of world-renowned scientists that are working on it. I just talked last week to a firm in Australia that has that cost down to $6 per acre. So it's getting there. Final thing is real estate values continue to rise. Right now, real estate, long-term, over the past 50 years, about a 5.7% appreciation. Regenerative land, we're seeing appreciate at well over 7%. That's causing major amount of money to be put into real estate right now. So with that, remember, your farm, your ranch is a reflection of you. Will you be ready for it? That's the question. There we go, Daryl. How was I? Not too bad? Yeah, am I fired? Few questions.
Yes, the question was, yep. I believe Gabe is going to expound a little bit more on his adaptive grazing practices. Sorry about that. Good job, Josh.
So that particular study compared in those states, they took a farm that was using adaptive practices. In other words, higher stock density, and they really shot for somebody, they liked a base of at least 100,000 pounds live weight per acre, being moved a minimum of once a day, okay, versus the rotational was just being moved once every 2 weeks, and then continuous was continuous. They monitored this at the start, and then they monitored it over a 3-year period. And they've done the same studies now in Canada, and they'll be doing one in the Central Plains here. So, and the Canadian one's showing the same thing. It's amazing. Now, it's highly dependent on the amount of moisture you get, because you have to have moisture to drive the nitrogen cycle to sequester carbon, and I'm not telling Ann anything she doesn't know, but yep. So, you know, I don't want you to think you're going to be able to sequester that amount of carbon here in western North Dakota. However, you can sequester significant amounts. That was simply with livestock, with beef cattle. That was simply beef cattle. Anytime you add another dimension, whether it be multi-species, the more diversity, the more that's going to drive the system. Okay, as measuring carbon, okay. Last week our team was on a conference call with Boy, well, it appears incoming Secretary Vilsack's team, let's just put it that way, and we were talking about these very things. And this is the fallacy of the federal government, okay? They think they can make blanket assumptions like this. And you're absolutely right, David. Give me a more degraded situation and I will advance it much, much quicker than something like your dad's been able to do, you know, or most of those in this room on our own farms and ranches. That's the fallacy of the government programs. That's why when I talked earlier about 2 wishes, my number 1 was to get a living plant everywhere possible. Number 2 was get the government out of the federal farm program, out of the farm program subsidy business, period.
Well, just bigger ag is starting to recognize the value of biology in the soil, so you're starting to see a lot of you know, so-called like biologicals you can buy in a jug. I can probably guess what you'd have to say about them, but
yep.
And they won't tell you what's in them.
Yep.
But they're marketing, you know, to be applied with starter fertilizer or whatever. I mean, just comment on those if you will.
Yep, comment on biologics. So the best answer to that I can give is I asked Dr. Chris Nichols, many of you know her, world-renowned soil microbiologist. I asked her about this a number of years ago, and here was her response. She said, Gabe, there is over 175,000 known species of mycorrhizal fungi. What do you suppose the 2 they put in that jug are the 2 you need? Okay? The other thing I will answer, Dr. Ellen Williams, one of my business partners, did 5 years of studies on biologics. What they found is the majority of those were dead by the time you applied them. The difference that showed up, any bump in yield, vigor, etc., was due to the carbon carrier that they were using in the jug. It was not due to the biology in that jug. It was the carbon carrier, because carbon drives the system. So anytime you influx carbon into the system, you are going to get a little bit of a response. So, I mean, what we tell our clients is if that salesperson did that good a job that you want to try it, go ahead, but make sure and do a check strip. And that'll tell all, okay? Don't gamble your whole farm on it.